Hello, welcome back to the Breaking News Update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I have a ton of huge news I'd like to share with all of you today. So, lots of big news coming out from this war that I'd like to brief you guys on. We're going to start off with a story coming out from Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and it'll be this story that you see right here on your screen. Russia is preparing a new spring offensive on Kharkiv and Sumy Oblasts. Russia is preparing for a new offensive in Sumy and Kharkiv Oblast this spring, President Volodymyr Zelensky said in an interview with Le Figaro published on March 26. So it was actually just published yesterday evening after our update video for the Russia-Ukraine war. So I wanted to start off with this story. So we continue to hear that Russia is not going to end this war. They are not ready for peace. I mean, if they're preparing for a new offensive onto Kharkiv and Sumy regions, it's pretty obvious that Russia does not want to end this, and they also want to expand their attacks onto Ukraine and try to take over as much territory as possible before this war comes to an end. So I'll show you guys that update here in just a moment. We also have reports that South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff has said that North Korea has sent another 3,000 soldiers to fight in Ukraine. This is on top of 11,000 that were already sent last year. We don't know how many North Koreans are currently fighting against the Ukrainians right now, but it could be in the thousands for sure. So it looks like they have sent again another 3,000. And Sergei Shoigu was actually just in North Korea recently to meet with Kim Jong-un. He's part of their National Security Council. So it looks like they were trying to request more troops, and it looks like they got it, is probably what we were thinking at some point back then when we reported that. That was probably about maybe a week or so ago. So it looks like that was most likely due to troops going to be entering into Russia again. So 3,000 North Koreans going to Russia that will fight on the front lines against the Ukrainians. Also, a very big report today that the Coalition of the Willing meeting was held in Paris. We have more than 30 leaders of different countries that were holding this meeting and talking about how they're going to protect Ukraine in the event that we get a ceasefire. Who's going to be deployed into Ukraine? How will all these countries work together in supporting Ukraine's sovereignty and ensuring that Russia does not attack them again if this war does end soon? So we'll talk about that as well. I've got a lot of big updates coming out from there. So let's go ahead and jump into this, guys. Lots of news to get into today. This is from Nexta. Zelensky, Russia is preparing for a new offensive on Sumy and Kharkiv regions expected this spring. The Ukrainian president warned that Putin is buying time and gearing up for a fresh assault, including in Sumy and Kharkiv. We see preparations for this upcoming operation. We've shared intelligence with our allies. We must look at the situation with eyes wide open. So yeah, imagine a lot of these troops that were fighting in the Kursk region and now in Belgorod. They're probably going to start pushing into Ukraine now, as a lot of these troops will be freed up. And even though Ukraine was fighting in the Kursk region for the last 9 months or so, we still saw the Russians somewhat making gains on the east. So maybe some of these troops will get sent to the eastern side of Ukraine to fight on the front lines, maybe in the Donetsk region or Luhansk. And then the rest of them will probably launch a new attack into the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. So right now, still waiting for more updates coming out from Belgorod. We haven't heard much movement over there in the last couple days. The Ukrainians took over a couple settlements over there, but that was about it. We haven't heard too many updates. So expect a new spring offensive coming very soon from the Russians. Now from Vicegrad 24, breaking: South Korea's Joint Chief of Staff says that North Korea recently sent another 3,000 soldiers to fight in Ukraine on top of the 11,000 soldiers sent last year. The South Koreans say that the Ukrainians have killed or wounded 4,000 North Koreans in battle so far. Okay, so potentially 5, maybe 8,000 North Korean troops will be in battle against the Ukrainians, as about 4,000 of them or so have been casualties in war. So this is not good news, okay? Another 3,000 North Korean soldiers being deployed to the front lines to fight against Ukraine. Now we'll talk about this Coalition of the Willing meeting. From Bliskovka, a meeting of the Coalition of Willing has started in Paris. Office of the President stated negotiations between 31 leaders of the countries are taking place behind closed doors. Okay, so here's a photo coming out today from this meeting in Paris. And this is all to do with supporting Ukraine's sovereignty and ensuring a enduring and lasting peace in the event that we get a ceasefire with Russia and Ukraine. We'll see if that happens to be the case, but European partners still working hard to get this coalition of the willing going and figure out how they're going to support Ukraine after the war ends. Here's another update from Max 24. Zelensky, our coalition of the willing and able partners, is already working. I'm grateful to France, the UK, and all those involved for their sincere commitment to helping us build long-term security. We need one clear plan, a plan that we can all agree on and start implementing. Okay, so I've got a quick video, 45 seconds of Zelensky here arriving at this meeting in Paris for the coalition of the willing. Take a look.
With all the authorities.
All right, so more than 31 leaders of different countries meeting in Paris today to talk about Ukraine and their security and how they're going to defend them after this war ends. So there's a quick video coming out from there. We'll move on to another update now from Max 24. Currently, more than 200 military planners from more than 30 countries are working on planning operations in Ukraine. The planning of operations that involves deployment in the air, sea, and on land, according to Prime Minister Starmer. Okay, so this is a very big update, as it looks like many of these countries, whenever they do start to deploy troops over here, when they get involved, they're going to be involved also on air, sea, and on land. Okay, so there's going to be multiple operations going on at the same time. This is going to be a very serious deployment of troops over here, and not just on the ground. Okay, we're going to have aircraft, naval assets, all kinds of equipment being deployed to Ukraine to protect them and to deter Russia from ever threatening Ukraine ever again, basically. So now from the Ukrainian Review, Prime Minister Starmer and President Zelensky told reporters after a meeting of the coalition of the willing in Paris there was no agreement among the leaders to lift sanctions on Russia. On the contrary, we discussed how we can strengthen sanctions to support the U.S. initiative to force Russia to sit down at the negotiating table. Macron also called Trump before receiving the leaders of the states in Paris. In 3 weeks, the partner countries will prepare proposals for monitoring compliance with the ceasefire in Ukraine. Okay, so you can see they're moving very quick. So in 3 weeks, they'll have a proposal on how they will monitor, both sides, Ukraine and Russia, making sure they comply with this ceasefire agreement. And this kind of goes in line with what the U.S. is doing right now. We know the U.S. is trying to work towards getting a unconditional ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. So Europe's doing their part, U.S. is doing their part, and Ukraine's doing their part. So looks like things are moving very quickly, and who knows, maybe in the next month we could potentially see a ceasefire come into place. And apparently the goal is supposed to be by April 20th, I believe, according to Donald Trump, okay, from the United States. Now for Max 24, a deterrence force will operate in Ukraine together with several countries. It will cover sea, air, and land areas and will be parts of a broader package of security measures, according to Emmanuel Macron. Britain will lead the initiative. Deterrence forces are not a unanimous decision, but we do not need unanimity to introduce them. It is not for Russia to decide whether there will be deterrence forces in Ukraine, he added. Okay, so they're talking about Russia recently coming out saying that NATO troops can't go into Ukraine, allied forces can't go into Ukraine, basically. So they're basically stating that, Russia has no say in this. They'll send troops in there if they want to. And apparently Britain and France are going to lead this initiative in terms of sending these troops into Ukraine, okay, and all the assets. Now from Bliskovka, European troops deployed in Ukraine will be able to respond in the event of a Russian attack, French President Macron said. He added that such troops will not be deployed on the front lines in Ukraine. They will be a force that will convince the Russians not to attack again, and by holding important cities, strategic bases, they will have clear support from several European governments and allies. Okay, so this is very big news also. This shows more on how the playing field is going to look inside of Ukraine. So it looks like European troops will be deployed inside of Ukraine. They will not be on the front line. That will probably be Ukraine on the front line, but they will be deployed to many different cities, strategic bases, maybe at ports or infrastructure sites. And this will prevent, Russia from ever wanting to attack again if European soldiers are inside of Ukraine. Okay, so that's very big news coming out, and they'll also be able to back Ukraine if they come under attack immediately. Now, from Max 24, a delegation of British and French military personnel will go to Ukraine to develop the format of the future Ukrainian army, according to Emmanuel Macron. Foreign ministers of the countries participating in the Paris Security Summit on Ukraine will prepare proposals for monitoring compliance with the ceasefire regime in 3 weeks. Okay, so we heard this, but this top piece of news here is very big also. Okay, so delegation of British and French military personnel, they're going to be going to Ukraine here very soon to develop the format of the future Ukrainian army. Okay, so they're going to build up Ukraine's army even more and probably figure out how European forces are going to work alongside with Ukrainian forces, and probably how many forces Ukraine will actually keep in service. I'm sure they will probably drop their numbers down a little bit. I think they have about like 800,000 active personnel right now. So maybe they might drop that down a little bit as European forces come in, but we'll see how that works out. Now, from Liskovka, the foreign ministers of the Coalition of the Willing have 3 weeks to prepare proposals for monitoring the ceasefire in Ukraine. This was stated by French President during a press conference following the summit in Paris. So we heard this, but I want to show you guys this news right here. Other Macron theses. Xi Jinping can play a very active role in promoting peace in Ukraine. Now is not the time to lift sanctions against Russia, as there must be a final peace settlement before this happens. And Macron is also going to speak to Trump again in the coming hours. Okay, so it looks like Macron going to be holding another meeting with Donald Trump here very soon. Probably going to talk to him on the phone. And they're not going to be lifting any sanctions on Russia. And they're still trying to push China to get involved here, maybe send peacekeeping forces into Ukraine. As we heard recently, their foreign ministry in China was stating that they were not going to deploy any troops into Ukraine, and that there were stories coming out recently that China was open to that and they were planning on sending troops to Ukraine, but their foreign ministry shot that story down and basically said it was a lie, okay? So now from Geo Insider breaking, Russia is categorically opposed to the deployment of any military contingent from Ukraine's allied countries. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova stated on Thursday. She warned that such a scenario could lead to a direct clash between Russia and NATO. Zakharova accused London and Paris of drafting plans for military intervention in Ukraine, disguising them as peacekeeping missions. She also accused Ukraine of once again violating agreements regarding energy infrastructure. Additionally, Russia criticized France's plans to establish a new military base on the island of Mayotte, if I'm saying that correctly, claiming it demonstrates Macron's unwillingness to respect the territorial integrity of the Comoros Islands. Moscow also stated that it expects sanctions against Russia to be revoked with the help of the United States. Okay, so big statements coming out from Maria Zakharova and their foreign ministry. So once again, they're coming out stating they're not okay with European soldiers being inside of Ukraine. Okay, whether it be just a European contingent or an actual NATO contingent. I'm not sure if these soldiers would be covered under NATO Article 5. I'm thinking maybe not. We'll have to see how things go and what information comes out on that. But clearly, Russia is not okay with it from what we continuously see from their responses here. All right, so now I want to talk to you guys about some attacks taking place inside of Ukraine last night. And something that I want to note is Ukraine is not launching any drone attacks into Russia. If they are, it's not being reported. But we were seeing major drone attacks coming from Ukraine just like a week ago, okay? And just over the last few days when this whole ceasefire on energy facilities inside of Russia came into effect, now we're not really seeing Ukraine launching massive drone attacks, but at the same time, Russia's still doing their thing and launching a lot of drones into Ukraine. So from Kharkiv, one of about 12 explosions in Kharkiv tonight. These strikes are as random as they appear to you. Russia just launches a bunch of drones. They can blow up anything: road, field, woods, school, hospital, mall, or homes. Anything, okay? So we got an 11-second clip of drones exploding in Kharkiv last night. Take a look. All right, so a very loud video, guys. Sorry about that, but you can see a massive explosion over here right in the tree line where this person is driving in Kharkiv. There was a lot of major hits over here, lots of drones entering into Kharkiv last night. Got several videos I can show you guys. Now from Victoria, Kharkiv now, more than 15 Russian strikes on civilians. Russia will continue to try to kill people for as long as it can. Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing here. Here's another video, guys, 23 seconds. All right, so we can see lots of major hits all over Kharkiv last night. This is in northeastern Ukraine in the same region that Russia might open up a new offensive pretty soon. That'd be Sumy and Kharkiv regions. So Kharkiv still getting heavily hammered last night. You can see some of these clips, like this one right here, another explosion there, and then there's already a fire breaking out in that same area. So they were getting hit multiple times by a lot of these drones incoming. Now from Savchenko, Volodymyr, Kharkiv, Sumy, Dnipro. Russian strikes that should never have happened. Ordinary residential buildings have been damaged. Russia kills people every day and drags out this war. Pressure on Russia is needed to save lives and to make diplomacy work faster and more effectively. So yeah, multiple regions coming under attack last night. Looks like Kharkiv, Sumy, and Dnipro all at the same time. And I've got videos coming out from Dnipro also in just a minute. But we can see massive fires here. I'm not sure if this is Kharkiv. It might be. But several big cities inside of Ukraine with major hits. We can see lots of fires here on these different buildings. Firefighter crews trying to put out the blazes. I mean, look at that, guys. Multiple fires here. One right here looks like another one potentially on the other side of this building. That's probably inside of Kharkiv last night. So now we'll move on to another update from Jay in Kiev. Russia now heavily bombing the residential areas of Ukraine's city of Dnipro. Okay, so here's another video. It will be a little bit blurry as they've kind of got it blurred out, probably to protect for security reasons inside of Ukraine, but you're going to be able to see explosions here. Take a look. All right, now Dnipro, being a city in central Ukraine, was another city being heavily hammered last night from Russian drones. And we can see an explosion over here. Looks like maybe some sort of gas facility or something blew up over here. I mean, look at the size of that explosion. Was it a gas station or something? I don't really know what it was. But Dnipro getting hit very hard last night. Now we'll move on to another update from the Kyiv Independent. U.S. must not let Putin out of global isolation, Zelensky says. He will die soon. That is a fact, and everything will be over, Zelensky said on March 26 in comments regarding Russian President Vladimir Putin. Yeah, so Zelensky was on an interview on a TV show, and he essentially said this, okay, that at some point Putin's going to die soon. There's been a lot of talk for probably going on 6 months or more now that that Vladimir Putin was sick. He had Parkinson's disease, or he had some sort of issues, some underlying health conditions that might make him potentially pass away. We haven't seen that yet. He's still around as far as we know. But Zelensky stating that apparently he's going to die pretty soon. So we'll see what happens here, and also calling on the U.S. to not let him out of global isolation, don't lift restrictions and sanctions on Russia. Basically that whole talk there. Now for Max 24, we have never stated that Ukraine will become a NATO member, but we do not rule out such a prospect in the future, NATO Secretary General Rutte said. Okay, so Mark Rutte coming out and basically saying that they've never stated that Ukraine will become a NATO member, which I believe Mark Rutte said that multiple times. Many different leaders in NATO have come out and said that Ukraine would inevitably be part of NATO at some point in the future. Now we're starting to see a 180 here. Mark Rutte coming out and saying that they're not going to be in NATO basically, but he is saying that they will not rule out such as prospect in the future. So maybe could Ukraine get into NATO at some point? Maybe, maybe not. And I think the only way they ever could get into NATO is maybe if there was maybe a major change of balance of power inside of Russia or something, as we know Russia is not okay with Ukraine joining NATO. That's the only way I could really see that happening. But those were statements coming out from Mark Rutte today. Now from Liskovka, Ukraine agreed to a ceasefire to prove that Russia will not agree to it, Volodymyr Zelensky says. There is a Middle East, which has always told me a one-on-one in other conversations that Putin is ready for a ceasefire, an unconditional one, that it is Ukraine that does not want to end the war. It is Ukraine that does not want peace. That is, Russian propaganda has worked very hard there. With these steps, I have clearly shown that we are ready for a ceasefire, but you will now see that Putin is not ready, the president added. So this was him in this on this TV show with these hosts kind of holding this interview here. I'm not going to show you guys a video because there's no subtitles and it's in Ukrainian. It's not in English, unfortunately, but this is basically what he stated here in this clip. Pretty much saying that he was trying to prove that Russia is not ready for a ceasefire, and it pretty much looks like that right now. I mean, Ukraine was real quick to just agreeing to a ceasefire with the United States, and look at Russia so far. It's been well over a week, probably almost 2 weeks now. They're still not really agreeing to anything at the most. In principle, agreeing to a Black Sea ceasefire, and that's about it, okay? And if anything, it probably benefits them more than it does Ukraine. Now, from Max 24, the EU is outraged that Russia and the US are discussing the restoration of Nord Stream without their participation. According to Politico, EU diplomats believe that the Trump administration is trying to gain new leverage over Brussels, okay? So, yeah, apparently the U.S. is trying to negotiate some sort of deal to restart the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to transport liquefied natural gas from Russia over to Europe. But apparently they're trying to do that without the EU's participation, so the EU is not very happy with that. We've been hearing about this a lot over the last week, that the U.S. is trying to negotiate something like that with Russia. Now, from Anton Gerashenko, 96 Russian cruise missiles were destroyed by the strike on Engels airfield, according to Ukrainian General Staff. These missiles were intended for strikes on Ukraine this spring. Additionally, aviation fuel was destroyed due to strikes on its storage sites. Glory. Okay, so if you guys remember this, about a couple weeks ago, or like a week back, we had this major strike on the Engels airfield inside of Russia. And there was like a missile storage warehouse over there that completely blew up. And this was the mushroom cloud that came shortly after this explosion. And it looks like, what was it, 96 missiles right here? 96 Russian cruise missiles being destroyed. I think they were KH-101 missiles being stored there at this site, okay? So that's just an update to let you guys know how many missiles have been destroyed according to Ukraine's general staff, okay? Now, from next, a U.S.-Ukraine deal on mineral resources will be indefinite, and any changes will require American approval, says Ukrainian member of parliament. The draft agreement covers all natural resources, including oil and gas, and contains no security guarantees, lawmaker noted. Now, I wonder if Ukraine's going to agree to that, considering that there's no security guarantees. They've come out multiple times already telling the U.S. that in order for them to sign any kind of deal, they want security guarantees, okay? So I'm wondering if maybe that's not going to happen now. So here's an update from Jay and Kiev also regarding the same topic. And it says here Trump's new Ukraine's minerals deal, for is a total looting of Ukraine, with Americans having 100% control of anything that ever comes out of the ground into perpetuity. Profits are immediately converted into USD or US dollars, then taken out of the country, not the reinvestment fantasy, and US always gets paid first for absolutely nothing in return, okay? So this is not looking good. This proposal is just getting worse and worse the more that we start to see amendments to it. So take a look at this from Telegram just briefly. Management of 5 people, 3 of them from the USA with full veto power. We are already talking about all fossils. That is, there's oil and gas, both new and existing, all over the territory of Ukraine. We are talking about mining and state and private campaigns. Money is immediately converted into currency. Fund money is withdrawn abroad. If suddenly, for some reason on our part, something does not work out, we pay extra. The U.S. contribution has already provided us with assistance from 2022. They can make a profit according to their decision. They receive a royalty from the fund first, and then Ukraine plus 4%. The agreement is valid indefinitely. Changes can only be made with the permission of the Americans. First night's rights on all the new infrastructure projects and veto rights on the sale of resources to other countries. Nothing about security guarantees, even hints. Okay, so this is not looking good for Ukraine. This is probably the worst proposal out of all of them, and it looks like this is going to be an indefinite proposal if Ukraine ends up signing this. I don't see Ukraine agreeing to it. I think they're going to want more amendments. Who knows? This might get dragged out even further. But it looks like the longer that this deal is going on, where they're trying to figure out some sort of way to strike a deal between Ukraine and the United States for this minerals in Ukraine, it looks like it's getting worse every single time. I mean, in the very beginning, there was one proposal. I think it was the second one that came out. That one seemed pretty good, and now we're starting to see a lot of revisions, and it's changing very rapidly. So now from Bliskovka, the U.S. has sent Ukraine its proposal for a detailed agreement on minerals, according to media reports. The government team is analyzing it, and the parties will discuss it later. Ukrainian member of parliament, Yaroslav Zelezniak, if I'm saying that right, received the text from his sources and said that this version of the agreement, in his opinion, is unfavorable for Ukraine. According to him, the agreement provides for the creation of a five-person governing body of the fund where three U.S. representatives will have veto power. Okay, so yeah, basically the U.S. will control all of these minerals inside of Ukraine, and basically Ukraine will get no say in it if they agree to this because the fact there being three U.S. representatives with full veto power, they're going to be able to veto any changes to this in the future and basically have full control over this. Okay, so having well over more than 50% of control of these minerals inside of Ukraine. Okay, so not good for Ukraine. Now, for Knoll reports, the EU has no plans to lift sanctions on Russia or allow its reconnection to SWIFT. The end of the Russian unprovoked and unjustified aggression in Ukraine and unconditional withdrawal of all Russian military forces from the entire territory of Ukraine would be one of the main preconditions to amend or lift sanctions, the European Commission spokesperson said. Okay, so we heard this yesterday, and this is a report that says right here U.S. needs EU consent for Black Sea ceasefire deal with Russia. Okay, so it looks like Russia's not going to agree to this Black Sea ceasefire deal and also potentially strikes on energy facilities. Thankfully, over the last few days, we haven't really been seeing that. So it looks like Russia and Ukraine, for the most part, appears to be agreeing to this, at least recently over the last few days. But it looks like, yeah, the EU is not going to be lifting any sanctions or anything. So I wonder how this whole ceasefire deal in the Black Sea and the energy strikes are going to work out. And wonder if we might see a complete reversal of that here in the near future as we continue to hear the EU is not going to lift sanctions on them. And that was a demand from Russia. Now from Max 24, Ukrainian aviation strikes bridges in the Belgorod region. Okay, so just a few days ago, I gave you guys an update coming out from the Belgorod region that Ukraine was controlling two settlements. I think it was Popovka and Demidovka, if I'm saying those right. Those were two settlements in the Belgorod region, far west, close to the Kursk region. And we had some videos coming out that some bridges were being destroyed. Well, we got new videos here coming out showing these strikes on these bridges from Ukrainian warplanes. Okay, so pretty cool video coming out there showing them destroying these bridges. Now from Vicegrad 24, Lithuania says the four missing American soldiers haven't been found yet. Defense Minister Sakaliene, if I'm saying that correctly, says there's no confirmation. As soon as the operation is completed, we will definitely inform everyone. The missing armored vehicle has been found submerged in a swamp. Okay, so a lot of weird questions to ask here coming out from this story. First of all, where are these soldiers at? If their tracked vehicle was found in a swamp, where'd the soldiers go? And something really big too is that Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, yesterday was saying these soldiers were killed. So how do they know that they were killed if they haven't found them yet? There were some reports coming out yesterday that they found their bodies. There was even some unconfirmed reports on X showing that maybe these men had drowned inside their vehicle. But now we're hearing that they have not been found yet. So where are these soldiers at? Were they kidnapped and brought into Belarus? What is going on here? Definitely a lot of questions to ask on what's happening in this situation. But that's the latest we have for this. And as soon as I get more info on this story, I'll let you guys know. I mean, these are U.S. soldiers that are missing now. So hopefully they are safe. But we keep hearing that they were killed. So I don't know how they know that they were killed if they haven't found them yet. I'm still confused about that. But you guys let me know what you think down below on that story. Now from Bliskovka, Air Defense Forces of Ukraine destroyed 42 out of 86 Russian UAVs. 26 Russian imitator UAVs were lost locally. No negative consequences. All right, so latest update today of the amount of drones going into Ukraine. 86 Russian UAVs in total. Looks like they brought down more than half of these, whether being shot down or brought down by electronic warfare. So there's your latest update there. Now our final update of the day from the Kyiv Independent. These are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of March 27th, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. So our final update of the day, Russia's losses as of March 27th, 1,670 troops, 16 AFVs, 169 vehicles and fuel tanks, 8 tanks, 58 artillery systems, 108 UAVs, 2 MLRS, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 special equipment. Okay, so lots more being destroyed today compared to yesterday. Even the troop numbers up much higher, usually around 12 to 1,300, and vehicles and fuel tanks popping back up to almost 200 again. Lately, we've been seeing less than 100. And 58 artillery systems, still quite a bit, right around 60, 40 to 60 on average that we see being destroyed. And yesterday and the day before, we had nothing on this side of the aisle here, but we've got an aircraft warfare system and a special equipment being destroyed over here on Russia's side. So lots of big news coming out from this war today, guys. I want to thank you very much for tuning in for this update on March 27, 2025 on Thursday. Can't believe tomorrow's going to be Friday already. This week is just going by so quick. So thanks again, guys, so much for tuning in. And if you got something out of this update, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.